trends, which are important to know because it gives you a clue as to what sectors are hot, if you will, or attractive and which are not, and why, how institutions are getting money into countries and out as well. And so we can make that information available to you as part of this presentation. For those of you who were not with us yesterday, briefly, let me introduce myself. Wilmot Allen. I'm a partner of the MBDA Export Center here in Kenya, in Nairobi, where I've been based for the last 5 years. I've done work on and off the continent for the last 20, having lived and worked in Abuja, Lagos, Harare, Zimbabwe. I am based here where I lead a company called VentureLift Africa, which you'll hear more about in just a minute, which is a transaction advisory firm, as well as having a marketplace for curated matches between businesses and resource providers. Those resource providers include investors, trade partners, supply chain partners, tech transfer, and professional services. We're thrilled about the fact that we're going to finally be able to launch everything live next month before our Diaspora Investment and Trade Deal event. Our partner at Chicago MBDA Export Center is working with us on that and leading that, and we're happy to be part of that with them. And so we'll share more information about that event. It's a deal event, not a talk shop, not a summit, not a conference. We are expecting people to come ready to be in a position to find out who can, what the investment opportunities are, who the trade partners are, and to begin to get business commerce done. A little bit more about my background. I also wear a hat as a private equity investor with a firm out of South Africa, investing in healthcare, RH Manager Group. And I came here in Kenya in 2015 to lead the East Africa Trade and Investment Hub deal team as director of East Africa for a firm called Cross Boundary, a transaction advisory firm headquartered in the US. Previous to that, I spent some time on Wall Street and venture capital, as well as development finance in the institution of the IFC, International Finance Corporation, working with the Financial Institutions Group, Private Equity Group, and Infrastructure. Got a chance to work directly with the CEO at that time as a senior advisor on entrepreneurship. My work in venture capital actually targeted minority and women-owned businesses in the US out of Boston. And prior to that, earlier in my career, was an investment banker, both in New York on Wall Street with IPOs, private placements, and in Silicon Valley. So enough about me. We want to give you some really rich and hopefully useful information today. So let's get into the program. First things first, I did want to give just a little introduction, say a little bit more about VentureLift Africa before we get into the presentation, because trade is one of the things that we do focus on in terms of the deals that we facilitate. Let's go to that. This is an overview of our model, being both a transaction advisory firm, but over and above that, the in-person deal making, if you will, connections. We also have a digital platform, which we're building now. It's in beta stage. If you go to the site, you won't be able to really journey through it, but you can register for us to send you our updated information, and more importantly, our launch information. We were incorporated in 2017, launched in 2019, and our business is connecting African businesses to key assets that will facilitate their growth and expansion. And we have targeted the diaspora as an underserved market to be able to work with, although we do work with everyone. We believe that that pathway in terms of these connections is really, really important. And to be honest, that's really why this symposium, this online seminar is happening, right? Because oftentimes there's interest, there's even capital, but the pathways, structured vehicles, partners on the ground who, in this case, in our case, who have familiarity both in the US and in Africa, I think makes a big, big difference. So we can share more about that with you offline. Please visit us on LinkedIn, on Twitter as well. You'll see that we have lots of information, articles. When we do launch, you'll be able to be exposed to some great stories as well as more. I'm not going to say too much because we haven't done that yet, but I think it's going to be a very useful property, particularly towards the goal that we're working with today, which is facilitating trade and investment, strengthening ties between the U.S. and Africa, and more. One of the things we want to lift up that we alluded to yesterday, now that you understand the sort of macroeconomic environment, the regulatory environment to some extent, the policy regime, which is supportive of trade and investment between the U.S. and Africa, and some of the key areas of focus, some of the competitive advantages, and even the risk of the countries that we're focusing on in East Africa. It's important to begin now to get closer to the ground, closer to the deal, and understand how do you go about due diligence, and what are some of the things in trade in particular that you should keep in mind. Now, this is not, a granular, detailed list. There is something called formal, commercial, operational, financial diligence that typically is undertaken by a third party to a company. We certainly do that business, and we know of others across the continent and in the U.S. For African companies that want to do due diligence on U.S. companies, we offer that service as well and have partners. But these are just sort of some rules of thumb, some things to think about as you proceed in engaging in deal making. Let's go through them. Let me move this down. And before we get into the deep presentation, I do want to say that this will be interactive in the sense that after each of the presentations that are coming, we're going to have a series of questions. First, we'll open it up for Thomas to take your questions through the chat, and then I also will ask some. And before we move to the conversation with the Kenya Chamber of Commerce, I will take questions as well. But please don't be shy about raising your hand in the chat room. There are no inappropriate questions with regards to the business questions, and we really want to be as helpful as possible. I want to know where you are in all of this and what are some of the questions that you have or the bottlenecks that you have that we can try to unlock. First point on the DD checklist, strong product, technology, or service that meets an appreciable consumer need. This is the classic product market fit. And that's really important to assess that and to do it early and to continue to assess it along the way as you're going along the process of an investment, entering a new market. And that does require local partners. If you're in the US, it's very, very difficult just to get by on research reports. It's even difficult to get by with an institution that's in the US that doesn't have partners on the ground. And so that is, the product market fit in terms of, does your trade product, it could be steel, which markets in Africa does it currently meet the need of? And I'll tell you, in the case of steel, there's just a huge opportunity here. We received an inquiry about purchasing steel from East Africa, and we were not able to source it here and had to look to South Africa, and initially weren't able to get the right price. Now I think we're getting closer to that. We're still continuing to look for that. But you'd be surprised, I think, on both sides, on exporting into Africa and exporting from Africa to the US, what opportunities exist that you may not know about, and how important it is to make sure that your product actually does fit a consumer need. The consumer need in terms of price, the consumer need in terms of the functionality of it, if it's a physical product, if it's service trade, what the expertise is, what the technology is, what the experience is that you're adding that actually not only meets sort of a smaller group, but actually can scale. And on the opposite side of that, you also want to distinguish between what is the total market and what's the addressable market. The addressable market will be, for instance, if you have a hair care product or a skincare product, let's use that. It may be that your skincare product is for a certain type of skin, oily skin, and you're coming into the market. You want to make sure that you've made the distinction between all of the women, maybe between 18 and 55, that are the target market that have such and such level of disposable income that typically shop at this place, A, B, and C, that you also try to figure out as well as you can that subset of the market, women with oily skin, that will probably be your repeat customers. So that's what we mean by target, the overall total market versus the addressable market. Point number 2, business model and strategic plan adequately tailored to the local and regional ecosystem. That's a corollary to part 1. It's not just the product, but it's the entire business model. In this case, it's how you think about getting your product there. We'll hear more about logistics. It's how you market it. Do you understand the culture? Are there people on the ground that can help you understand, in the case of a place like Kenya, where there are some peculiarities related to tribes still. And that may be a foreign concept to America, but on the opposite, there are some peculiarities in America related to race and ethnicity as well. So it's not very different. But these are types of things that you need to understand. What else do I want to say about that? So again, it's not just the product or service itself, it's the whole business around it, how you handle transport, how you handle marketing, how you handle competition in terms of having leverage with suppliers, et cetera, and distributors on the ground. Third point, large local and regional market with ample ongoing demand throughout the continent. If you want to build companies that are most sustainable, they will be companies that are going to be scalable. And scale in this case, we mean not just in terms of being able to move in different verticals, but also different target markets. One of the things that you want to keep in mind as you think about being able to scale in Africa, the policy environment that can support that. We mentioned the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, which will, I think, lower trade barriers and customs bottlenecks, and even some of the difficulties with trading in terms of currency, in order to facilitate greater trade intra-Africa. And that's something to think about and to follow closely and to plan for in order to be able to kind of not only just come into Uganda here in East Africa, but to spread and to move out in larger footprint into the larger region. That brings up the next point, adequate regulatory, legal, and intellectual property support. If you have a technology, the IP support is really, really important to get the regulatory understanding, the right legal support, legal advice, and entering the market, both from the US standpoint, if you're coming from the US to Africa, as well as here on the ground. I can tell you in some countries here, this is true all over the world, but when there are new technologies, oftentimes the regulation lags, right? So in the case of fintech, here in the region, the regulatory environment and policy framework is lagging and catching up to it. And we see that in the US, especially with the social networking platforms and like Facebook and others, where the regulation related to privacy has lagged, right? And so this is not uncommon anywhere in the world, but those are some ways it's important to look at how these things play out in the local context or the targeted context in which you plan to do trade and investment. Strong financial performance and cash management, that goes without saying. I don't think we need to really look at that, but there are some peculiarities of countries in terms of what's called capital controls, rules as to how you can repatriate, get your money out of that country back into your own bank account where you are, if that's what you plan to do, as well as currency risk, how that factors into the financial performance. Obviously, the bigger concern now, if you're looking either way, in any country here in East Africa right now, is the economic recovery that everyone around the world is now experiencing. Effective, coachable management team with track record of success. Now, if you noticed in how I present things, it's never one-sided. It has to be balanced. Believe it or not, it is very important if you're an American exporter or a trade partner or investor coming into Africa, it's very important for you to be coachable as well, right? To understand that, hey, you're coming into a new market. You need to put on the hat of a student, and with even though you have deep domain expertise, understanding culture, understanding how things are done here is really, really important. And I can tell you, humility goes a long ways in doing business, and being able to ask the right questions, take advice. That may seem, really, really obvious, but I've seen how it has played out in really stymieing deals from going forward. And the effectiveness of the management team has to be tied to real metrics, operational metrics in terms of performance. It's not good enough that you like the person, you love the country, it's a great place to visit. You will lose money if you're not diligent on making sure that milestones, financial milestones, business milestones are met, and there is success that is demonstrated, and there are financial management controls, et cetera, that are in place. Next point, little competition from local and regional manufacturers. That would be ideal, but that's not always the world we live in. And so, yes, in terms of entering, you don't want to come into a crowded market, but you have to be prepared to find a way to diversify or to set yourself apart or to distinguish, differentiate, establish some sort of competitive advantage. And you can do that in many ways. But entering a new market where the barriers to entry are low and the number of competitor players is relatively low, ideally is something that you want to be able to check on your list. For investments, reasonable company valuation and opportunity for stronger exit. We looked at that a little bit yesterday and looking at some of the private equity investment trends and exit trends. We'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. So join us again when we talk about investments. But company valuation. One of the things I'll say there is it really is important if you're entering into the market here to try to get a local firm, and you can find, PwC here, KPMG, their investment banks that can give you the value, help you with valuation and financial due diligence if the market is unfamiliar to you. Also, be able to follow in your sector what the track record of exits have been, the multiples, the valuation post-exit. All of these things are really important to understand before you engage in trade and investment. I want to stop there. I'm going to go to the next slide in just a minute. Thomas, I just wanted to check in with you to see if there are any questions.
Oh, not yet, Dr. Wilmot.
Okay, great. We will keep going. Great, I'm almost at my half an hour. So we want to also just point you to some companies that would be able to help you along the way. I'm actually going to come back to this slide at the end because I want to make sure, depending upon how much time we have, I can do a deeper dive here. But I'll go over at a very, very high level. There are financial partners here that are able to work with you, able to help with you in case of the investors to co-invest with you, in case of trade finance suppliers to help support your transactions with loan guarantees, with trade finance to help you be able to get product here and manage your working capital, as well as development finance institutions. I used to work at the IFC, and I can tell you the importance of development finance institutions cannot be underestimated. And that is because they supply a lot of risk capital, if you will, before larger commercial institutions typically enter into deals. And most of the, I still think this is true, most of the fund managers, private equity fund managers here, probably as first-time fund managers got their support through a development finance institution. And then I mentioned bank and loan guarantors. It's important to know who they are. Deal sourcing, again, I'm going to come back to this slide if we have more time at the end.
Dr. Allen, we do have one question. Is it difficult to get product patents in East Africa? Do U.S. patents need to be registered through a patent process in East Africa?
I'm sorry? Is it difficult to get?
Is it difficult to get product patents in East Africa? And then the second question.
I think there's going to be a lot of variation. I remember we're talking about 54 or 55 countries, right? With varying levels of sophistication when it comes to the regulatory environment. I can say in Kenya, that's something that's going to be best answered by a lawyer. And so I think that in general, it's the same challenge everywhere. In terms of it's difficult. It's not easy going into a foreign market anywhere and getting a patent, right? But what I would say is we will have a lawyer who will be able to advise us on that, so that I don't misspeak about because that really is a more of a legal question. I think it has to do with a few different factors. One is the existing patent in another country where you're coming from, where you're domiciled. If you're not domiciled here, if you are trying to establish a company here, that's a whole different ballgame. And there are different rules and standards that would apply.
So, and I think you answered the second part of that question too. It says, do U.S. patents need to be registered through a patent process in East Africa? So,
yeah, I don't want to misspeak on that. We can write that down as a question for the lawyer to help us with tomorrow. And then that information, I would think if you go to Ken Invest, you can find, we mentioned that company yesterday. I don't think we had a profile on them, but here in Kenya, Ken Invest, maybe KEPSA, Kenya Private Sector Alliance might have some information in that. But I'll take that question and revisit it next year with our lawyer, who's going to take us through a lot of legal considerations such as those in detail.
All right. And that's it. That's all we have right now.
Great. Okay, I'm almost at my half an hour. Let me just quickly go through deal sourcing. This is really important. How do you figure out where the deals are? Government, institution, trade promotion agencies. We took you, I'm tempted to go back and show you some of these companies, but we took you through on a country level, some of the enterprises, such as I just mentioned one, Ken Invest, KEPSA, CAM, can help you help you to understand what those opportunities are. In Kenya, there's a big new initiative called FinTech. I'm sorry? Hello? Sorry. There's a big initiative called FinTech now that I'm part of the steering committee for, that will be a platform for that will complement the others to promote trade and investment awareness with Kenya. And so that's going to be really important as we think about the FTA, the free trade agreement between the U.S. and Kenya. I'll say this about that. I do think that there are a lot of deals that you will see on government investment and trade promotion agencies. We'll hear from Uganda Investment Authority tomorrow when we talk about investment. But then you also understand that a lot of these deals are sourced and information shared based upon informal relationships, professional relationships, colleagues who are maybe in the private sector. So you see, if you look across to your left, you'll see private equity firms. It's probably good to know a couple of them so that you can get a sense as to not only what the deals are, but the pricing, what people are paying, how they are getting their money out, what some of the challenges are. And then local transaction advisors. There are boutique firms like I work with and like we are now, but also there are larger ones, right? There are KPMGs, the PwCs that are larger and take this on. Investment institutions I just mentioned, chambers of commerce, the American Chamber of Commerce in many countries in Africa now, but there's also some of them are in the U.S. that have connections to Africa, such as the East Africa Chamber of Commerce, the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Black Chamber of Commerce. Those are starting to get some deeper connections into Africa. There are companies like, or institutions like the Corporate Council on Africa. We do at VentureLift, that is our business, to source deals. We keep an ongoing list of deals across a variety of sectors that include different stages. So it's early stage. We'll talk about angel investment tomorrow. We have those deals that maybe are below $250,000 that you can find out about, to larger transactions that some of these firms, and I'll come back to the Carlyle Group. You know, you're talking there 100 million plus transaction value. African Invest is a little bit below that. Typically, all of the continent also invests in different asset classes, more early stage investments now. Catalyst is a growth private equity investor, as is African Invest primarily. Novastar Ventures, VC, and I mentioned our work at VentureLift. So also the banks, law firms, banks, professional service firms are good institutions for deal referrals. Government incentives, I think we're going to hear about that from Cindy as he talks about the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Special economic zones. We showed you how that works in the textile sector. For sure, we'll hear from Mark Priestley at Trademark East Africa about special economic zones, trade and logistics clusters, and some of the incentives that are offered, such as tax holidays, reduced customs, and other tax exemptions. But I now want to kind of transition into more of the practical part of deal making by sharing with you some colleagues who have generously stepped forward to share their expertise and experience, and to walk us through some of the deals that their institutions and their companies have been involved in. So before I do that, Thomas, let me just ask one more time if there are any questions that want to be posed at this time.
There is one that says, do you have a list of these chambers of commerce?
Yes, they are what I just mentioned, and I do have them. We can send them. I'm not really paying attention to the chat, Thomas, but if he or she could kindly share his contact details, I can share that information with him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you can take that.
Will do.
Okay, great. So we are going to move into the presentations, because I think these are going to take up a little bit more time. I want to make sure all of our guests, we appreciate their time and insights, and want to give them proper opportunity on the mic. So we first want to welcome from the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Onesmus Cindy. Onesmus, sorry, I'm kind of shuffling here, getting myself organized. Onesmus Masindi is Trade, Research, and Policy Manager from the KNCCI. I'm really excited about this because one of the things that you have to realize is countries have different levels of organization, different structures in terms of devolution, in this case, the county system. In Kenya, where deals get done, I think more gets done on the county level than it does on the national level. So it's really important to know how these types of systems work. And Masindi, welcome. I'm gonna go out now. Are you with us, Masindi?
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I want just to give a brief overview that you've just given about ourselves. And then from there, I'll be able to give an overview of how well are we working with the counties in terms of investment. What have you been able to achieve as an institution at the country level? Today, Kenya National Chamber of Commerce is a private sector-led institution. One of our primary roles is to make sure that we support enterprise climate, we build relationship with government, we build enterprise activities, and we work with a membership across all the 47 chapters that are devolved in Kenya. And one of the primary functions in terms of supporting trade and investment, we have a very key role in terms of economic diplomacy. Under economic diplomacy, our key activity is to see how well do we advance our foreign commercial agenda abroad by looking at key markets abroad that we want to make sure that we align ourselves in terms of markets. We build export capabilities.
So I'm sorry, Ms. Cindy, we need to call up the presentation just so that they can follow you. I'm not sure if you are going through the presentation, but we want to have that because you have some great information. Do you have the slide deck that was sent over, or should I call it up? Or I think Robert has it as well.
Yeah, I shared some slides with you. I'll want to use what I shared with you just to give some brief presentation.
So,
yes.
Sure. So give us 1 second to call up those slides. Robert, can you call up those slides, please? Do you have them?
Sure. Let me.
Sorry about it. Let me just, also, if you can't, let me just see if I have it.
That's the Kenyan.
Do you have it, or should I go? So let me see if, so let me make sure, I'm sorry, Robert, I can't hear you. Let me just, what I can do is probably, because I'm going to be toggling between, but I'm not going to be presenting, obviously, at the same time. So let me maybe go show my screen, and I'll handle it because it may be easier that way. So let me just call these up. Okay, so Ms. Cindy, can you see the?
Yes, I can see a brief about ourselves.
Okay, so let me just, it's like, just give me 5 more seconds. Okay, great. So we're going here, great. So just guide me through the slide deck and I will follow you.
Okay, thank you very much. Like I've mentioned that as an institution we established in 1965, we are part of the International Chamber Network. Within our country today, we have got 47 devolver county chapters. We are within all the 47 county chapters. Our mission is to support a sustainable business environment that can enable enterprise growth, prosperity. We work within the 4 pillars of our businesses. Our first pillar, we look at the policy advocacy, we look at trade development, we look at the SMEs, and then we look at the county developments. These are very, very key in terms of us working. Then what are the key enablers within ourselves? We enhance our membership, development and communication, institutional excellence in networking and partnerships with all the stakeholders that we want to work with in terms of achieving our mandate. I think we can move on. I can just give a summary, yes. I've already mentioned our mission as an institution. We want to see a prosperous business community. Our mission is to facilitate and promote sustainable business environment for economic growth and prosperity. Our rallying cry is to growing your business together. I think we can just move on straight to the county issues, and then I can be able to highlight how do we support issues related to environment, develop issues related to investments. Thank you very much. Yes, I want to give a brief overview of this. Today, as a chamber, as I mentioned before, one of our key roles is to promote what we call economic diplomacy. And under economic diplomacy, we work very closely with the government in terms of promoting our country trade situation for either international or local investors. And for the international investors, one of the key areas that we do, we look at how well do we present our investment climates within our 47 counties. And then within our 47 counties, one of our key roles is to identify, do we have adequate key pillars that will attract and support any investment for foreign investors? We work very closely with KenInvest that has the mandate in terms of taking care of the investors, attracting investment and making sure that we retain the investment. So within that kind of program, as a chamber, one of the key areas we provide what you call adequate trade information within the counties. We support issues related to advocacy to make sure that there's an enabling environment for those who want to put their resources. We also provide data that informs key opportunities that are available for investment. We also link the same investors with key government agencies at the county level in terms of opportunities they want or any information that will support them in terms of investment. And apart from that, you also look at what else do we present as counties that can be very emerging in terms of investment. So within the 47 counties, you'll find that they provide what we call attractive investment opportunities. The same counties have got key adequate skills. Apart from the skills, there's also the issues to do with technology innovation. Our counties provide adequate markets for emerging opportunity areas. Apart from that, you'll also find that there are also ongoing key alignments in terms of structures to do with skills that any other investor will want to come and put their resources. There's also the available labor that is well developed with good education, good skills that can support those who want to put their resources in the country. And some of the key areas that attract investment opportunities today in the counties are areas related to energy. And one of the key areas is renewable energy. We have the solar energy that is very, very attractive. We are moving towards clean energy on our clean policy. The other areas that are also attracting a lot of investment around our Big Four today, we have an ambitious program, what we call the Big Four. These are tailored programs for the government. They'll want to achieve key programs within housing, that is the affordable housing. They are looking at issues related to food security. They're looking at the issues related to healthcare. These are universal healthcare they also want to achieve. And then they're also looking at issues related to manufacturing. So these are the key programs that are potential investors will want to put their resources. Our counties present these very, very well. And then also the areas of information and technology, education, textile, apparel, leather. These are areas that are very, very key in terms of those who want to put their resources. Mining is also a key area that is very key, that is also emerging for those who want to come and put their resources. And under this, the government has adopted an ambitious industrial policy under special economic zones, industrial development parks, EPZS, and out of these, the government together with the county, the national government together with the county governments, they provide incentives that will attract those who want to come and put their resources. There are tax exemptions, there are customs incentives they give, working permit, very good, attractive policies within the counties that can support those who want to invest. So what do we do today as a chamber? One of our key roles is to make sure that we work with the counties to make sure that we align good policies. Apart from policies, support them to have structured information that can be aligned to potential investors who want to come and put their resources there. Also, the advocacy will also make sure that there is adequate support for investors who have already put their resources here in terms of business environment, business reforms, to make sure that there is that after-sales services for the counties that have attracted key investment opportunities along various value chains. And the other area is just to make sure that we open up more areas that any other kind of the investor can put their resources. So in a nutshell, Kenyan counties today presents emerging development opportunities that any other investor would like to come and put their resources. And this is very cool because today Kenya started a discussion, Kenya started a bilateral discussion with the US and other countries in terms of emerging areas that we like to move together in terms of investment. And out of this discussion, there is a lot of comprehensive agreements that will want to minimize the barriers that we have seen as countries in terms of doing businesses. These will open up more opportunities for local investors, and it will also add up within the upcoming Africa Free Trade Continental Area and any other regional agreements that have got opportunities for any potential investor. So as a chamber, we are available to give any other kind of information for any potential investors, do linkages, give market information, data, trade statistics that will support those who want to come and put their resources here, and even make sure that there is a lot of aftercare services, dialogue with the government, both national and county governments, on constraints on policies or any key constraints that will hinder any kind of investment, and make sure that there is improvement for those who want to come and put their resources here. Just additionally also to add, with the emerging crisis that you've seen out of the COVID-19, today as a country, we also see that COVID, as much as it's a crisis, a challenge, it also presents other opportunities within the country. There are also new emerging opportunities in manufacturing, joint ventures, public-private partnerships, business engineering, business restructuring, and even joint opportunities in terms of digital trade, digital opportunities to make sure that there's alignment of businesses, alternative markets for those who want to work with the local people. because most of the local people want to see stable supply chains within the regional markets, within the local economy, and make sure that they fit within the global value chain. So as a chamber, we are happy to support any kind of structured working relationships that will support enterprises through our established joint business councils with various countries, and even joint technical business programs that will give feedback to government in terms of making sure that any other constraints that hinder or have constraints on businesses will be addressed jointly by government and the private sector in terms of having a competitive enterprise environment with the skills, with good climate, and any other enabling factors that will support and attract investors. Thank you very much.
So thank you for that. I wanted to, first of all, go to Thomas. Let me just come back so you all can see me. Thomas, do we have any questions for Ms. Cindy? I have several, but he's given us a good introduction to some of the investment opportunities. And I know there are a couple other slides, so maybe Ms. Cindy, we actually can go back to those other slides, including, I think there's a last one after this in terms of case studies, which we'll ask you to take us through as well. So Thomas, over to you for any questions on what he shared so far.
Well, actually, we've had a couple of comments and asking contacts and things like that. So I've actually put your email out, your contact information out again.
Okay, super.
Wilmot at VLAfrica.com, but
Sure.
They would like to have an Excel spreadsheet available with details of all speakers and key people that can assist, name, position, email, website, professional, social media, contact number. So I'm kind of, again, I put your information out there so that, everything can kind of be directed to you.
Okay, super.
And then there was a question if there, besides the videos and the presentations over these next 3 days, from yesterday, today, and tomorrow, those will be available for viewing, and the presentations will also be available after tomorrow's. So I've informed them of the viewers of that as well. So,
Great.
but other than that, no specific questions.
Okay. Great. Okay, super. Okay, so Ms. Cindy, thank you very much. Can you help us to understand how many counties are there in Kenya? And in terms of working with the counties, for example, there's a federal Ministry of Agriculture, and you listed an agribusiness investment opportunity. What's the relationship between sort of the national federal level ministries and the county level institutions that have jurisdiction? So number of counties in that sort of jurisdictional dynamic and working relationship between federal and county in terms of working at a person who wants to do trade or investment working with government.
Thank you very much. Today, our government is a devolved government. We have the national government with key ministries that have specific mandates in terms of ministerial policies and key functions. And at the same time, we also have devolved county units, which have got specific roles that they are very devolved functions. Like you find the agriculture has been devolved within the counties. Those are key functions that have got what we call national policies aligned at the national level. But when you have very specific functions, they're done at county levels. And apart from that, we also have other specific devolved functions like healthcare that have been devolved at county level. Still other functions within the national government. We also find services like water-related activities that are also devolved. So we have specific activities that the county governments are mandated to do within agriculture, like extension services, agricultural information, managing key value chains, providing data and statistics for farmers. Apart from that, doing trainings for farmers. Those are very key agriculture-oriented functions that have been devolved in terms of agricultural mandate. But when you come to national policy, still those ones are managed at the national level. And then the working structures you find within the county levels, we have specific mandates that has been given to ministries that are being managed by the county executive committee persons who are responsible to run various ministries that have been involved within the counties. And under these, you'll find there are structures that work in terms of intergovernmental relationship on how these relationships are coordinated between the national government, the county governments in terms of either financing, in terms of policy. And out of these, we have what we call a council of governors, where we have all the 47 county governors who form part of the core working mandate. Out of that, you also have specific sector committees within that that align themselves with the national function and the county governments in terms of day-to-day activities.
Great. Okay. So let me just ask you a real practical question related to that. And I have like 5 or 6 questions, so I'll be succinct in my questions. And also, if you can just give us a succinct answer, because I'm trying to get as much information out there by asking these questions, that would be appreciated. First of all, related to, this is an actual opportunity I received. I haven't read through it in its entirety yet. An opportunity for Naivasha is a special economic zone in that area having to do with steel manufacturing. So if I'm coming in, it was advertised by Ken Invest, but to what extent would like the counties be involved in that? Because what I want to help the attendees understand is, well, I'll say it differently. It could be a concern, right? That you have to knock on the doors of 25 different offices just to get kind of basics about the deal and to begin to get things in place so that you can actually position yourself to participate in the deal. So in something like that, where there's something, a posting of a tender, or in this case, an opportunity for investment. I've also recently seen something about sugar fields, sugar harvesting, farming. The land is being leased, the farm is being leased. How does that work? Am I going through just the county, just the federal government? What's the streamlined approach to getting to where you want to be, which is bidding on something, investing in something, or doing trade when you see these types of opportunities? Mr. Mercendi?
Thank you very much for that. Today, as a country, as I mentioned earlier, we have a national investment promotion agency that is a Ken Invest. It has the overall mandate in terms of attracting investment, coordination, retention, aftercare services, and making sure that they align activities. And today they work under the concept of a one-stop shop. When you talk about one-stop shop, you know, many a times you'll find many investors will not be happy to get a lot of constraints whenever they want to put their resources in the country. So for them to get it right today as a country, are working on what we call a one-stop shop, where we want to go and get all the activities, either in terms of permits, in terms of ministerial requirements that one will want to establish any kind of enterprise registration. All that one's supposed to be found at a one-stop shop. But today, there is also the establishment of the special economic zones that has special mandate to drive the special economic zones within the country. So it has a very, very specific mandate in terms of coordinating key activities within special economic zones, industrial centers, industrial parks, and they work very, very handy within the county established investment boards. Initially, we had not established what we call the county investment boards or the county investment agencies, but today, with the new investment policies, counties have been given the mandate to drive their own kind of investment as long as they align themselves within the national framework of the Vision 2030. And that Vision 2030 is coordinated very well with the national body. So you start with the national body, and then there are those specific county promotion agencies within the counties. But in terms of coordination, it also now varies. If we have programs that have got national interest, then you'll find those ones are driven with the national investment body. But those ones that have specific interest within specific counties, then those ones will be championed by the county investment board. So we have Ken Invest that has a national mandate to champion national investment policies and make sure that they are coordinated for programs of national interest, and then for programs that will work within the counties, so specific within counties that the counties have mandate, then the county agencies will drive. special programs that have special interest within special economic zones. There's a new special economic zones authority that has that now mandate to drive that. But there are a lot of functions in terms of managing those mandates.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. Let's go quickly to some of the case studies. If you can just maybe pick out one. We're almost at the 30-minute mark. I do want to ask you about a trade deal as well. So if you could comment on this, and then maybe tie in how, since this is more of the trade focus now, an investment, and I appreciate you sharing this and being with us on short notice. But if you could share with us, in addition to one of these investments that you've supported, how you've supported a trade deal as well.
Today, as a country, at a national level, private sector level, today as a chamber, we get a lot of trade inquiries, particularly from the visiting delegations. Whenever we also host our trade fairs, we get these, we also get online inquiries. So we've been getting a lot of inquiries in terms of investment from various areas, along various investment sectors. And one of the key areas of investment opportunities that we have facilitated, we've been able to facilitate investment programs along key areas like agribusiness. Like, for instance, we had an investment trade fair in Trans-Nzoia. That is one of the counties that is found in North Rift. And during these investment, we had people with interest to invest in agribusiness and in milling sector. We've facilitated that jointly with the county government of the Trans-Nzoia, where people have invested in massive production of corn, that is maize. And then these maize, they want to do feed production. Apart from feed production, they also want to do flour that will support the human population in terms of food and food security. This is an area that we supported. Once we identify these people who are keen to invest, our primary role is now to introduce them to counties of potential in the area they want to invest. The other area that we've supported is the area of, in several counties we've done this. We've been able to support investment in renewable energy, that is solar. One in Kericho, where we've identified some investors from Italy, and then it's been able to get some massive, it's an ongoing program. It's a PPP program between the county government of Kericho and the investor, where they are putting some large-scale solar program that will want to support affordable energy for the county. That is an area we've supported. We've also been able to introduce key players in other sectors like healthcare in Kakamega, where these investor who is in the process of putting up a private healthcare facility. At the same time, we also got one that we have also introduced, who is also building, it's called a healthcare facility that is being built in Machakos. So we get most of these investors, we do joint discussions with Ken Invest, and then from there we share the same information in the counties that they have interest, and then the same investors put resources in these areas of interest. So these are some of the activities that we support the counties by identifying counties of potential in areas of interest, and then aligning them with key specific government agencies that will support them on information, issues of regulation. And then from there, we work very closely with other government agencies, particularly being led by Ken Invests and specific counties on where they like to put their resources. And one of the key areas that has facilitated this kind of information today as a chamber, before COVID, we've been running our county investment programs where we organize 3-4 days exports, and then we attract participation from local investors, international investors in various sectors. Out of these, then we get some potential people who like to put resources in those specific counties where we've done those fairs and trades activities.
Great, and I do want to give you an opportunity, Mr. Mercedes, thank you again for this very useful information, to let our attendees, listeners know how they can join the chamber. Maybe it's up above, because I think, we have heard requests for information, and I think it's, it really would be good for them to know how they actually can join. You do offer memberships to non-Kenyan based entities. Is that correct? And
Yes,
these
we
are
do.
some
We do.
Okay. So if
Yes.
you can tell them how they can join, I certainly will pass on your information to them, because I think we want to support the facilitation of business development for the chamber as well.
Yes, I'll be able to give you some specific membership information at various levels and any other partnership arrangements that we like to see for partners who will join the chamber. And sometimes, apart from just being members, we can even sign specific memorandum of understanding. We define function, define relationship on how we like to collaborate, what are kind of the functions and relationships to build that will promote the relationship in terms of doing trade either between specific countries of interest and ourselves, and then we define the timeline and develop a work plan on the kind of relationship that we want to build.
Great, and I just pulled up the priority areas that you have alluded to: SME development, trade development, networking, and partnership. So thanks again, Mr. Mercedes. Let me take it over to Thomas. I did not see any content questions. I saw more logistics and procedural questions about getting information. But Thomas, do we have any specific questions related to the content share?
No, not at all.
Oh,
no.
Great. Okay, so Mr. Mercedes, thank you so much for your time. If you have the time to stay with us for the rest of the time, just in case something else does, another question does arise, we welcome that, but we certainly understand you share with me that you've been traveling quite a bit today. So thank you so much.
They want to know, we got one question.
Thanks.
Do they have regular meetings? Does KNCCI have regular meetings?
Thank you very much. We do have regular meetings, and part of our meetings, we have meetings at various levels. We have meetings at secretariat level that will align our day-to-day activities on what we want to do. We also have other organs and structures within our working mandate. We have working committees at various levels that would like to support us on some of our activities. We have some quarterly board meetings that defines the direction that we take. We also have engagements with key stakeholders on various issues that affect our day-to-day working. We do dialogue with our stakeholders, our partners in areas of interest that we like to do. So we do our meetings in terms of just making sure we align our priorities, we keep our people informed, and making sure that we share our mandate, our information, and our key activities that we do. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Masindi.
Thanks.
So next, we want to transition to understanding how trade gets done from a trader. And we welcome Mr. Kevin Morrison, principal with the Morrison Group and a partner of VentureLift Africa, who's been a tremendous resource for us. Kevin is in Kenya and in the US Northeast every other month practically. And so he will give us some insight into, particularly now, what Ms. Cindy is talking about, what we've talked about in terms of the free trade agreement, US Kenya. A lot of those deals are going to be very large transactions, for entire sectors, for, large agricultural commodity deals. We also want to give you a view as to how, if you want to move smaller amounts and quantities of product, how do you get to do that? What are some of the nuts and bolts? What are the opportunities for doing that based upon what's actually happening now? If you're in the U.S., want to engage Africa that way. Obviously, we want it to be two-way, but for the purpose of this case study, Kevin's going to focus on coming in from the U.S. into Kenya. And if we have time, can talk about some of the diversity of that going from Africa to the U.S., because he does it all. And so welcome, Kevin. Look forward to hearing more about the great work that you're doing in trade. Can you hear me? Are you with us?
Can everyone hear me?
Not very well. It's kind of shaky, your internet connection, at least unless it's on my end, but I think it may not be. Okay.
Okay. How about now?
Yes.
Is it better?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. Just so I had to get closer to my router. So thank you, Wilmot, for the introduction. Let me turn on my video. And as Wilmot stated, we are a advisory firm that has developed expertise in international trade. And I'll do a brief introductory and tell you how we came to the continent of Africa and identified opportunities. We were first invited to a mission through a Pan-African organization located in Philadelphia back in 2010. And we were invited initially as an agricultural firm because I had partnered with an organization in Philly to build an aquaponics farm. And aquaponics is a farming technique based solely on water where you don't need land and you can do it indoors or outdoors. That started our journey onto the continent, initially in Western Africa. During the trips to Western Africa, we also were invited to eventually Southern Africa and Eastern Africa. So as an organization, we've been to a total of 9 continents. And coming in as entrepreneurs, our initial goal was to identify opportunities for our own business. The opportunities on the continent are abundant, as everyone is very aware of at this point, based on the information shared during this program. We decided as an entity to enter in the East African market via Kenya, ultimately with hair care. And believe me, we have, as an organization, we've been received calls for opportunities in mining, telecommunications, all types of farming, all types of opportunities we've been contacted over the years. And in all honesty, you know, oftentimes we will pass along these opportunities to other entities, as well as sometimes look at them for ourselves. So we decided to settle on Eastern Africa, specifically in Kenya, because we thought it represented the greatest opportunity for penetration, market penetration across various sectors. Of course, Western Africa presents great opportunities as well as Southern Africa, but we felt Eastern Africa was the best region for opportunities at the time. So for the last several years, we've been still visiting the various regions, have yet to be to the North Africa or Central Africa, but eventually we'll make our way to that area. And during that time, we discovered that there's a group of expats from the United States on the continent that are there to do the same thing that a lot of other expats, American expats, want to do: identify opportunities, and even, as indicated by Dr. Allen, make African countries a home base for them so they can facilitate those opportunities. So Morrison Group was introduced to VentureLift Africa via an expat in Kenya seeking to do the same thing. And during that time, we have identified several opportunities, one that we're going to discuss today. One of the things that we feel are very relevant for Americans entering African markets is that understand there are many cultural similarities between the United States and several African countries. And these cultural similarities present opportunities, as indicated by the case study that we're going to discuss today. And oh, by the way, during the course, after my case study review, I will be able to facilitate questions. And since we've gone through the entire process of importing and exporting, actually from the continent, we do have a wealth of information and experience, successes and failures in facilitating those business opportunities. So back to the cultural similarities between African countries and America. One of the things we noticed initially upon visiting several African countries, and I'll specifically say Kenya and South Africa, was a similarity in food. So that similarity in food has presented multiple opportunities, including the one that we're going to discuss today. So in Kenya, there's a cultural phenomenon called Nyama Choma that we call barbecue here in the United States. So I had the opportunity to meet an owner of a Yamachoma restaurant that was very familiar with the barbecue culture in America. Actually, I met two restaurant owners, one with multiple restaurants, Yamachoma restaurants, the other one with just one. And both owners wanted to bring American-style barbecue to Kenya and thought that offering both styles of barbecue in Kenya would be a unique and lucrative opportunity and experience for their restaurants. So we are in the process of facilitating a relationship between GGK Restaurant, which is located in Nairobi, Kenya, and LC's Barbecue, which is located in Kansas City, Missouri. As everyone knows, most of the Americans on the line, the barbecue lifestyle here in the United States is highly featured, highly consumed by Americans, watched on TV. Pit barbecue masters have become famous and wealthy just through offering American style barbecue, which includes different types of sauces, regional sauces, dry spices, regional names. And Kansas City, Missouri is one of the more famous regions in the United States for barbecue. I just so happen to have a business relationship with LC's that existed in another area, but as soon as the restaurant owners in Kenya identified their ideas, I automatically had a match for them to facilitate that process. So Morrison Group has currently facilitated the delivery of sauces and dry rub to GGK that they have currently used in their restaurant on a test basis with the goal of ordering commercial size orders of sauces and dry rubs. So prior to even getting to that point, we as an organization identified the logistics involved with shipping, which we had done from previous business ventures, the regulatory requirements for shipping of classified as a condiment, which would be the sauces and the rubs. And since these are small organizations, one of the things that we've identified is that the small and medium organizations do not get the same level of attention as the large corporations when it comes to import and export, especially here in the United States. You'll find that an entity like a Boeing Corporation has planes all over the continent of Africa, but a medium-sized or small-sized company may not have market penetration on the continent just because the trade organizations, either on the state level or the federal level, haven't facilitated or paid attention to those entities. So the deal size that is expected to happen would be annually up to 100,000 USD for LC's restaurant, which is a 33-year-old entity located in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm sorry, it would be estimated a total of 3 to 5 million, not 100,000. This should give the opportunity for GGK, as they've already received favorable feedback from their customer base, that the sauces meet overall the local needs of the palate of Kenyans. GGK has asked for certain changes and potential changes in the recipe, which is something we're in discussions to happen for now, and see if the LC's is willing to make changes to their proprietary blend. When it comes to shipping, like I said, due to previous experience, we have relationships with several American-based organizations that ship to and from Kenya, which will eventually facilitate the commercial size orders for the sauce. In addition, you'll find doing business on the continent that many entrepreneurs and business owners usually take approach of having multiple streams of income. And we've discovered that if you do one particular business well or facilitate the activity of one business, you'll often be pulled into additional opportunities on the continent. So we as an organization have been asked to facilitate export from the United States of apparel, specialty linen for hotels and hospitals, fashion watches, and most recently, cosmetics. So the most important thing, as Wilmot stated, is that as an entity, we've been able to travel back and forth to the continent. So it allowed us the opportunity to understand the local business culture. That stated, identify trusted business partners, and keep this in mind. As any entrepreneur is fully aware, you will have successes and failures within your business activity over that time, or the entire time. I apologize for that. So we have had failures and we have had successes during our time in doing business on the continent. One of the things we share specifically with our client base in the United States is we help them get a cultural understanding. We help them get a market understanding, because one of the things that we find is the biggest challenge with engaging U.S. companies is just in first convincing them that there are opportunities there for their products and services. And as alluded to previously in the presentations that have occurred already, of information that's been shared, there are opportunities for the governments of the United States and the governments of the individual African countries to facilitate trade and investment. And one of the things that excited us when we initially engaged on the continent is that we attended an event hosted in Philadelphia where the ambassadors of several African countries did a presentation to entrepreneurs, and all of them stated they want to do business with Black Americans, and that of course they're willing to do business with all countries and ethnicities, but they want to do business with Black Americans. So that's what compelled us to make the effort to do business on the continent and continue to make the effort. So in closing, we would like to specifically communicate that there are opportunities for small and medium-sized businesses to penetrate the African markets and emerging markets that have the desire to do business with Americans, are aware of American brands, large and small, and the cultural influence of Black Americans specifically in Africa, in my opinion, professional opinion, gives us a competitive advantage in entering certain markets. So we've had the opportunity to understand the price variations, especially with retail products, understanding the impacts of tariffs and duties. And that understanding and knowledge was gained specifically by our first formal business venture on the continent, which was the export of hair care products as a company manufactured here in the United States to East Africa. So that said, I'm open now for questions. How am I doing with time, Wilmot?
You're doing good. Let me jump in with a few questions, then Thomas, we'll come back to you. Thomas, do you have any listed right now?
No, not right now.
Okay, great. Let me ask you. So, Kevin, let's talk about some of the things that could be logistically challenging, right? So you have to give people samples, right? So what happens if, in terms of liability, if you've encountered anything like this, you're taking barbecue over to GGK Grill, and the sauce that is, and what happens if there is, or how have you managed the whole sampling process in terms of whether it's hair, in this case, barbecue sauce, how difficult has that been? And then I want to ask you a follow-up question about how you've been funding this. I know it's, the deal sizes are up to 100K. So have you thought about expanding that? And if so, what are you looking at in terms of financial institutions that might be able to help, with these under $1 million size transactions? But first things first, just managing customers in terms of getting supply, getting samples over. Mark is going to share with us a lot more about the distribution, trade, and the logistics clusters, but I want to start there with you.
Perfect. Thank you for the question, Wilmot. And actually, this is a perfect segue to, at the present moment, and I say present because the curtain isn't closed yet, to one of our most recent failures. Morrison Group was contracted by a local retailer based here in Brooklyn, New York, looking to identify a African manufactured cell phone to offer retail here in the United States. So we had the opportunity to identify the cell phone manufacturer, and the American company was ready to do business with them and requested samples. Well, the manufacturer on the continent stated that they would send samples once they're paid for. And that's where we hit in, because the American company expected, as happens in all industries, to receive free samples, whether they're cell phones or barbecue sauce or whatever the case may be. So the deal fell through just on that point alone. And that's an indication of being able to understand and navigate the business cultural differences. Comes to shipping other samples or other sample relationships, we always explore the difference between shipping by various entities, by air with private shipping companies, and by air and sea, as well as by air and sea with the U.S. Postal Service and or some of the other larger shipping companies such as DHL and FedEx and UPS. To this point, we've utilized the United States Postal Service, DHL, and private shipping companies to ship products and samples by air, and private shipping companies, of course, to ship products by sea. And the success rate of those shipping activities so far have been good, but keep in mind, one of the biggest hurdles in logistics is customs clearance. And to give you an example, when we first shipped our Morrison Group, shipped a large amount of hair care products to Kenya, it happened during election times, and during election times there, the customs were delayed extensively, which was something we did not anticipate, which delayed our entry to market. Luckily, the items have a long shelf life, but things like that can impact the shelf life of a product if it has one, as well as market entry. And frankly, we had made commitments to local salons anticipating the product based on the natural order of things, and that ended up being delayed by over a month from our original goal.
Great. One other question, Kevin. I know you are now thinking about expanding, and are there pathways to kind of helping, again, sort of smaller deals like this one, to having a structured pathway to getting goods in and out of the continent? I know there's something called the free trade zone that you're now negotiating and involved in here in Nairobi as a last mile distribution?
Yes, we've been able, as an entity, of course, partner with VentureLift Africa to identify an organization in Kenya that is setting up Kenya's first free trade zone, which is comprised of a logistic company that will operate a facility, including warehousing and shipping container storage, as well as offices in a tariff and duty free or reduced zone, specifically designed to facilitate trade, import and export. The entity is located right next to the airport and right next to the recently developed standard gauge railroad operation in Nairobi, Kenya. And this organization is able to bring products all the way from the main port of East Africa, Mombasa, Kenya, to Nairobi for distribution in Kenya, as well as distribution region-wide. As a financial, from a financial standpoint, we have had the experience of facilitating the export of linen products manufactured here in the United States. And during that time, the company that manufactured the linen had previous international experience in exporting to East Africa through a previous business entity that they owned. And then at that time, we were introduced to trade insurance to mitigate risk for the manufacturer that exports. And trade credit insurance is an insurance facility that provides payment protection for the company that exports to a specific region. Now, due to the worldwide downturn in the economy, due to the pandemic, the trade credit insurance industry has taken a hit. And since that, the opportunity to secure trade credit insurance is not as great as it used to be. But trade credit insurance would pay the exporter, for instance, the linen company here, if the importer in Kenya had defaulted on payment for the products. So just to give you an example, if you agree to ship $50,000 or $5 million worth of product to Kenya, and you do it on a credit basis, and you don't do it on a obviously pay before delivery, the trade credit insurance would protect your shipment from the United States to Kenya if the importer in Kenya defaults, and you would receive your $50,000 or $5 million, or whatever the cost of the transaction may be. We have identified through involvement with VentureLift Africa, like Exim Bank, that is now, which stands for Export-Import Bank, which is now focusing on small and medium-sized business, import and export, as well as entities, small and medium-sized banks in Kenya that are willing to support import and export as well. As for any entrepreneur's access to capital, and that's just as important in international trade and development is also access to capital.
Great, thank you, Kevin. I want to open it up to Thomas as well to see if there are any questions from our attendees.
At this point, we don't have any questions from Mr. Morrison from the attendees.
Great. Okay, Kevin, I have a big question for you. So Kenya has lots of land, lots of cows. Does U.S. barbecue compare to Kenyan?
Well, yeah, Kenyan barbecue is a dry barbecue with just spices and rubs. They don't do sauces in Kenya, but yes, Kenyan barbecue is definitely comparable. And remember what I said about the cultural differences. I've discovered that barbecue is a phenomenon also in the southern part of Africa, southern region, including South Africa, Botswana, and Swaziland. They call it a different name. They call it the braai, but barbecue is just as big in southern Africa as it is in eastern Africa. So once again, the continent represents a multitude of opportunities just in that industry alone.
Great. Yes, no, Kenya has a lot of good food, not just meat. I'm not a red meat eater, but there's not a shortage of good restaurants here from cuisines around the world. And even the local food, I think most people, especially in the US who grew up in the South, would relate to foods like ugali and the stew. And so, yeah, that's great. Kevin, thank you so much for your insight and for your time. I think there was a question about
let me mention one more. When it comes to consumer products, many major cities on the continent have a significant expat population, American as well as other countries. So there's also a market for local companies to target the expat population. So for instance, in Nairobi, the United Nations, the U.S. Embassy, other countries' embassies are target consumers for American products.
Got it. Okay. So Kevin, one last question. This one is from our attendees. What's the sales cycle in terms of how long did it take you to close that deal between GGK and LC's restaurant?
Actually, it was a short sales cycle. It was 2 months, 3 months.
Okay. Great.
2 to 3 months.
Okay, great. Thank you again so much. I am going to ask our attendees to start preparing your questions during the presentation, because when I'm making the transition after asking Thomas if there are no questions, we're still getting questions, and he's telling me that there are none, and it cuts into the time of our next speaker to go back to those. So if you guys could oblige us on that, we'd be most appreciative. We do now want to bring on Mark Priestley, who is Senior Director of Trademark East Africa. His company handles big deals, so we're trying to give you a diverse perspective here, really focusing on this big elephant in the room, which is logistics. Mark is the director there, grew their business in Rwanda, Trademark East Africa, to a large business, and is a development economist by training. Welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for your time. I think he's unmuted now. Great. Okay.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm just actually trying to upload it. Okay, great. Do you see the presentation?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So good evening, everybody. Maybe I could just quickly put on my video just so you can get a glimpse of where I'm at. As you can see, it's winter in Kenya, so it's a wee bit nippy, but very happy to talk to you all, and thanks, Wilmot, for inviting me to this session. So what
Mark, I'm sorry, one second. We still can't see you. At least I can't. Is your video on?
Yes, I can see him.
I can see him as well.
Great. Okay, so maybe it's on my end. Great. Super. Sorry, Mark. Disregard that.
Sorry, it keeps unmuting or muting. Yeah, so really excited to be on this call. I hope what I'm going to do today is just share with you my organization's experience with promoting trade and investment into East Africa. So if I start with, actually, I would like to move to the next slide. You know, I'm a senior director at Trademark East Africa. Trademark stands for Trade and Markets in East Africa. So we're a not-for-profit agency set up by initially by the UK government, but we're also funded by USAID, and we've been in operation in the region since 2010, and we've been managing funds now up to over $1 billion, and essentially we invest in projects to facilitate trade on the one hand, and then on the other hand is to help companies trade more, particularly for exports out of the EAC, but obviously also to import into the EAC. So if we look at this map, this map looks a bit like a London underground with lots of sort of corridors. And basically it sets out, I don't know if you can see this, but Mombasa is there, and then Dar es Salaam is here. These are the main arteries and corridors. This is called the Northern Corridor, and it goes all the way to Kampala, which is the capital of Uganda, and then on to Kigali here, the capital of Rwanda. And then from Dar, you have what they call the Central Corridor, which goes to Bujumbura, the capital of Burundi. And here you have, obviously, DRC, South Sudan. So these two ports are critical, they're critical gateways into East Africa and the hinterland beyond. And they serve all the import needs of these countries. And so when we started our work in the region, we looked at the cost of trade and transport down these main arteries from these two principal ports. And what we found was that the cost of transport was really high. So a cost of a 20-foot container to go from Mombasa all the way to Kigali was about $5,000 for a 20-foot container. So that meant that, and I used to live in Rwanda, that meant when you bought something that was imported, whether it's a can of beans or whatever, that 40% of those costs are imported, are the transport costs of just moving the product from Mombasa to Kigali. So this is a really big cost. So when we started, one of our key aims was how do we reduce the cost of transport? And then that was going to be one of our main sort of things that we were trying to do. And so we did manage to bring down the cost. So this is just to give you an idea, by 25%. So this is US dollars per square kilometer per container of cargo, from let's say $3 to 2.2, whereas in the US and Europe, it's about $1 per kilometer. And so it goes up even higher if you're in Burundi and these sort of landlocked countries of Burundi, Rwanda, South Sudan, and Congo. So that just gives you an idea, a little bit of those costs. Because of the work that we've done, and I'm just going to show you quickly, we've invested in a number of projects to bring down these costs, and we were successful in bringing down the time it takes to move along these corridors by about 16%, and the time to cross borders, which was another big bottleneck, by 70%. And so I'm just going to give you a flavor of some of the projects that we've invested in. So this is Mombasa Port. This is President Kenyatta signing a charter where all the shareholders and stakeholders working at the port agreed to improve the efficiency and productivity of the port. We invested also in some of the infrastructure around the port and productivity. So, you know, there's been the biggest bottleneck when we looked at the corridor was at the port. So by reducing the time, we helped reduce the time by about 41% in Mombasa and 35% in the port of Dar es Salaam. The next project, these are border crossings across the region. So for instance, we've helped build and invest in the infrastructure, the hard infrastructure, but not only the hard infrastructure of these border crossings, which we call one-stop border posts. Before a truck coming across to a border would have to stop 2 times, once, let's say on the side of Kenya, and then the other on the side of Uganda. Now a truck just stops once. So you can sort of see here, this is the one between Kenya and Uganda. And you could deal with everything within this building. So that that helped, and combined with soft infrastructure and the application of IT technology, we've helped the time to clear goods, for instance, in this border crossing by about 70%. So we do a lot of work with ICT applications. So this is an example of an electronic single window in Rwanda. And here we have a cargo tracking system. So we can follow a truck moving from Mombasa to Kampala. So this is in the Ugandan Revenue Authority, and they're looking at a Google map, and they can actually see trucks because they're being tracked with GPS tracking devices, and you can see what's happening to the truck as it moves along. And this is having a huge impact in reducing transit times and creating savings and more productivity for truckers. The other one I just wanted to talk a little bit about was, you know, a lot of trucks get stopped along the corridors. So reducing what we call NTBs, these are non-tariff barriers, but basically they can be things like police checks or things like that. Or the other side of it is on standards. So when we talk about the EAC, this is a regional market, and it's, you know, it is a common market, so it's a customs union and a common market. So if you want to trade with the EAC, you have the opportunity to access the whole market, not just say the Kenya market, which has a population of say 55 million people. You can access the whole EAC market, which is about 130, 140 million people. So some of the things that we do is, it's very important that when you're trading across these borders, that your standards are harmonized, so that if you meet the standard in one country, it is recognized in the other country. So that you don't have to worry about, if you produce something in Kenya, you can trade that in the rest of the region. So we do a lot of work with the Bureau of Standards, but also with the private sector to help them meet those standards. And that also works if you want to, for instance, export from Kenya to the United States. You would need to meet the standards that are required, you know, for instance, in agriculture standards, so food and safety requirements are very stringent, and we would be helping companies to meet those standards. So if I just keep going, so what we found out was, although we had a big impact on reducing the cost and time of transport and trade, there were still challenges. And so this slide is really just to give you an idea of the trade imbalances. And I think Wilmot had been discussing a little bit about that in yesterday's session. But these trade deficits, these countries are typically importing 5 times more than they're exporting. And so they're running these trade deficits. And the sort of levels of poverty are quite high, particularly in rural and urban areas. So one of the challenges that we felt was, how can we help these countries move, not rely so much on imports, but drive their own industrialization by diversifying their exports from the EAC to other countries, and to drive that whole industrialization that, you know, other countries like in the US, you've already gone through that many years ago. So that's kind of the challenge that we've been working on. That challenge, because of COVID, so this is a slide just to give you an idea of how all the gains that we made in reducing the costs and time of trade have been a little bit eroded by the COVID situation. So unfortunately, the trade has been reduced. The cost and time of trade has been going up because there are long delays along those corridors, as at the borders. There's testing now that is required of truck drivers, and so this has now created a new challenge, I guess, in the region at the moment. So this is something that we're also trying to work on. But coming back to the challenge of helping these countries industrialize, I think some of the speakers before talked about industrial parks and special economic zones. So one of the big challenges is to attract foreign investment. So this is what we talk about under this component. And then what we've seen, for instance, in countries like Ethiopia, although they've set up these industrial parks to attract investors to do higher value adding addition and manufacturing, for instance, in garments, they're not linked to the local economy. So trade gets, garment materials get imported in, say from China, and then Ethiopian workers work on assembly, and then it goes back out again, and there is no footprint in the local economy. So this is the other side of what we are trying to do in the region. So to summarize that, essentially, we're trying to set up industrial parks or special economic zones in order to attract investors. And it would be fantastic to talk to you about potential investors interested in these parks that we're setting up around the region. And these are being set up in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and Tanzania in particular. And because when investors come to the region, there's no sort of home for them. So there is a shortage, or there has been a shortage, of industrial service land. And so this is one of the projects that I've been working on in the region. So on the coast of Kenya, we're very much focused on addressing some of the challenges, as I was mentioning, poverty, investment, and the challenge of on the coast of Kenya is that the tourism industry has been massively hit. So there's a lot of unemployment on the coast. And the other dynamic that is happening in Kenya is that they've introduced the new train called the SGR, Standard Gauge Railway, and this is moving economic activity away from Mombasa to Nairobi. And so the region on the coast is struggling. And so we're looking to set up an industrial park on the coast that will focus on these sectors, so blue economy, agro-processing, particularly related to tropical fruits and nuts, textile and garments. So I think Wilmot has talked a bit about this, but under the existing AGOA agreement, there are a lot of garment manufacturers in Kenya, and with the COVID crisis in Asia, globally, there is a desire now to move supply chains from Asia to Africa, to set up manufacturing in Africa to take advantage of the AGOA agreement. So there is a lot of attraction in the textile and garment sector, particularly for these industrial parks. And then finally, sort of light manufacturing. So again, I think Wilmot has talked a bit about this, but pharmaceuticals, health, automobile industries, electronics are the sort of sectors that we think would be really interesting for these industrial parks. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the one that we're looking at on the coast is in Kilifi. So this is Mombasa. It's a special economic zone. So what's special about the special economic zone? It gives you a lot of tax benefits and tax incentives, and it gives you the flexibility to either export outside of the EAC or to manufacture goods and sell your product within the EAC common market, which is, as I mentioned earlier, a market of about 130 to 140 million people. So we're very excited about this. I'm not sure if this is of interest to this group, but it's certainly a need in the region to attract foreign investors and link that to the local economy as best we can. So I think I'm going to stop there, Wilmot, if that's okay.
Sure.
And to answer any questions.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mark, for that great presentation. You're back on mute, so you may want to unmute soon. Just a question from me to start it off. So what are some of the plans for some of the complementary assets that have to be put in place in terms of cold chain storage for fruits and vegetables, for horticulture? Is that part of the special economic zone in the TLC clusters, the TL clusters?
So, I mean, horticulture is obviously a really vibrant sector in the region. Kenya exports a lot of horticultural products particularly to Europe. That is either shipped or flown out. The Corona situation obviously has had a big dent on air freight. That is slowly being turned around. But, so there is, it's not so much, I mean, cold storage is obviously a big challenge in that sector. Air freight is a big challenge. So we've been working not necessarily on this particular opportunity, but certainly with the Horticulture Association and the airline industries like KQ and KLM in particular, to try and bring down air freight costs to make those exports still competitive. So what we've seen is a bit of a V-shaped recovery in that sector. There was the floriculture sector was really hit hard, horticulture less hard, and now we're seeing a bit of a recovery in that sector. But the hardest hit sector is definitely tourism and aviation. But I think that's true for the rest of the world.
Yeah. So are there facilities like for cold chain storage? Is that part of the plan to have those integrated?
We are exactly. So we are talking to a potential investor, for instance, as a tenant into this one. The location near Mombasa, so product coming, imports coming in. Cold storage will obviously be important, in the vicinity of Mombasa to take product up to the rest of the region, but also for exports as well.
Okay, so we have a couple questions. One is, in what way will you plan to address some of the fragmentation among different trade and logistic operators by integrating them into the clusters? Is it a plan for kind of recruiting them? If so, what does that plan entail in terms of using some of the other operators who maybe operate on a smaller scale that could be a part of this TLC?
Yeah, logistics, I mean, it's a cross-cutting sector. So I think it will, whether it's a park here on the coast or around Nairobi, for instance, there is a company, ALP, that is setting up, modern logistics hubs around Nairobi. A component of the Kilifi Eco-Industrial Park will be logistics, because that will need to serve the tenants of the park, but there will also be possibly a need for standalone logistics service providers. So we're also talking to potential tenants around logistics. So that is happening around Mombasa and Nairobi. So I think what you're seeing is a lot of private sector players beginning to bring, modern, high-end logistics, warehousing to Kenya and the region to serve the needs of the region. So that is beginning to happen, and we think these sorts of facilities will help facilitate that as well.
Great. And we have a question, I'll take part of this one, from a hair care manufacturer that wants to maybe source inputs from here in terms of oils and butters. We're happy to talk to you about that more, Kevin. Rogers, thank you for that question. But Mark, are there, based upon what you know, particularly along the coastal regions, are there RFPs or tenders out right now for someone who wants to come in and kind of begin to invest in, primary agriculture and then process that and then maybe ship it back to the U.S.? You're muted, Mark. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no worries. No, I think there are a lot of opportunities for the agribusiness value chain on the coast. The sort of emerging sort of opportunities are in around coconut, and coconut is a really versatile product for value adding on coconut oils, soaps, and things like this. I think there are 19 different products you can make from coconuts. Mango is the other sort of tropical fruit that is, in terms of sort of juicing and dried fruit, I think would be a really good opportunity. And then in the nuts is the other field. So for instance, cashew nuts is a really big opportunity, and you've got players coming in looking at these opportunities. And so typically, we need to work with the county governments and the local farmers to work on, the generation and production of those agricultural products. And then the idea is that the industrial park would provide a home for processors to add value, and then Trademark would be helping with things like standards and certification. And some of the aggregation and logistics challenges of moving product around.
Great, that's super. So we will be in touch with the attendees and others who are interested in investment opportunities, becoming part of the investor slate, if you will, of agricultural investing on the shore there. And I do want to say also the Diaspora Investment and Trade Deal event, which we will be hosting along with MBDA Export Center, is an excellent opportunity to find out more, not only about information and opportunities, but the actual partners will be there as well. So people who you actually can do direct transactions with, who maybe own the land or have the tenders, et cetera, who are part of the government or even private sector. So Mark, you've unlocked a lot here. Just helping us to understand all of the delays that go into when we see, wow, that transportation cost really bites. It really gets you. And it is something that I think that it helps us to understand all the complexities that go into that, the markup, because of the delays, the standards that have to that one has to comply with, et cetera, et cetera. But it's great news that the TLCs are in development, and this is an opportunity to help industrialize, centralize the value chain here. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. So thanks everyone.
And I'll be sharing all of the speakers' information and contact information. So feel free to reach out to us. I think my contact information is in the chat. If you can take the TME presentation down, I just want to go back to the slide share from, okay. Yeah, so let me just go back to here, and then we're going to wrap up. I think we're at 7 o'clock. So I just want to say, just in wrapping up here, a couple of things. Thomas, I'm sorry,
Yes.
are you still with us?
I'm still with you. Yeah, it
Okay.
is. It's time to wrap it up. Yep.
Yeah. So I do want to say one thing. We will come back to trade deal execution partners at the top of tomorrow's time with you, and so we will make sure you understand these key steps for execution on imports and exports, the complements of what's been said so far. So thank you again. We look forward to joining you all right back here again tomorrow, same time. Thank you to the MBDA Export Center and all of our speakers. Have a good day.
All right, and thank you guys as well from the MBDA Export Center, as well as Chicago Minority Supplier Development Council out of Chicago. Thank you, Wilmot. Thank you to all the dynamic speakers. Again, it was a plethora of information, just as we had yesterday. And of course, there are a lot of questions coming about, and I know everything is condensed in a short 2-hour window, but again, you'll be able to give us, you can contact us. You can go onto our website as well, which is www.discoverafricanmarkets.com. You can reach us on social media at Chi MBDA Export Center, or you can reach us on Facebook at Chicago MBDA Export Center.com. And you know where we are, we're a nonprofit organization, and we also help minority businesses again to scale their businesses, and we actually do those services for free. So definitely reach out to us. You can become one of our clients. It doesn't cost you anything. And we can continue to bring you information and expound on the information that you're actually receiving. With our partners like Wilmot, who are on the ground, we put you in touch with those guys. If you guys want to, make those local connections, that's exactly what we do. So keep all of that in mind as we're doing these things, and as you're taking in this information. Don't feel like, okay, it was too short. How do I do it? How do I do it? That's what we're here for. This is just an introductory, just to get you guys to understand what's going on, and then we engage with you directly, one-on-one, to help you navigate the rest of the process. So hopefully that makes sense. And again, we'll continue tomorrow. We'll have a little more information. And at the end of all of this, we'll share all the information that you've seen directly with you. So if you have any questions, you'll be able to direct them directly to us, either here at the Export Center or directly to Mr. Wilmot, Dr. Allen himself. So with that being said, thank you guys, and see you tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone. Terry, hi. Can Robert send me the chat, please, by email, if that's okay, as he did?